Hello and welcome to the businesslab.tv. Thank you for tuning in. We're here today in the Business Lab, the secret bunker, and let's have a look at what we have under the microscope today. It's a good one. 5 myths about giving great presentations. So when giving presentations, we're often told if you want to relax, be less nervous, to focus on the back of the wall, to focus on an object at the back of the room, so as to avoid getting nervous by looking at individuals in, say, the front row or anywhere else in the room. That's a myth. I think it's very, very bad advice for a presenter because it's the quickest way to alienate and disengage with your audience, because what you're effectively doing is saying, I'm not looking at you, I'm not speaking to you, I'm not presenting to you, I'm presenting to that pot plant in the back of the room. So actually, I think it's much better to embrace your audience a bit. You know, make eye contact with people in the front row, in the middle rows, move around looking at different people in the room, because what you're doing when you don't do that is denying yourself the feedback, the instant feedback from someone, say, making eye contact with you, locking eye contact with them, smiling, they smile back, that's approval for your presentation. If you don't get that from someone, move on to someone else. Remember, you have a whole audience to choose from. Either way, if you're just staring at a spot in the back of the room, you're not going to get that, you're not going to get that engagement with your audience, and ultimately you're not going to have that deeper connection with them during your presentation. Another way to disengage with your audience when you're giving a presentation is to focus too much on memorising a script. It was once told to me the best way to give a great presentation is to know your lines. Now, in actual fact, it's much better advice to know your material than to know your lines, because if you memorise your entire presentation, your entire script as a script, and try and deliver it word for word, you're putting yourself under incredible pressure. And also, your audience will sense, they'll get that feeling that you're concentrating on the script, on the lines, and not on delivering the presentation and engaging with them. So, as we said, much, much better to know your material, know your main points, and then deliver those. That also prevents that horrible scenario of just running out of things to say because you've forgot your lines and you don't know what the next step is. A bit like a method actor who knows their character, and if they can't remember their lines, can say something that the character would say in a certain scenario. You'll be able to talk through your points, not necessarily in the exact lines you wanted to, but in ways that are still engaging and, you know, make sense to your audience. So, don't worry about knowing your lines, just make sure you know your main points to deliver them well. Bill Gates and Microsoft have produced some genuinely world-changing software that impacts on our everyday lives and working lives. But one application they produced, PowerPoint, should come with a health warning when it comes to giving presentations, because over-reliance on PowerPoint and bad PowerPoint delivery is one of the things that really marks a bad presentation and one that will not engage your audience at all. I'm sure everyone who's been in the world of work or the corporate world would have been kind of subjected to the overlong, irrelevant, overdone PowerPoint presentation that really lets down the presenter and ultimately doesn't make the point that their material is trying to get across in the best possible way. So our tip is, first of all, don't necessarily assume you have to have a PowerPoint. You can deliver a great presentation or a speech without the use of PowerPoint. Think about it, there was a time when PowerPoint didn't exist, when people didn't use projectors as much, when people just used their speech and their oratory to make their point. Now, we do have technology like PowerPoint now, and we do have slideshows and projectors, so we can illustrate our presentation, but that's the point. It should be to illustrate, to add value, to add information to your presentation, not to become the focus of your presentation. So the myth is that you've got to have a great PowerPoint. It's got to be really all bangs and flashes and special effects. In actual fact, it just has to be relevant and support what you're saying. So it shouldn't be a barrier between you and your audience or a distraction, but something that enhances what you're saying and helps you get your point across better. When I first started giving presentations, advice that was given to me was that I move around too much, I was too animated, and I should stand still with my hands by my sides. And that's something that is told to a lot of people. And again, that's another myth that we want to bust wide open today, because it's one of the worst things you can do, to just stand rigid with your hands by your side, barely moving at all. Now, a lot of people will say, better that than to be gesticulating too much, moving too much, basically distracting from the points you're trying to say. Now, whilst that's true, what we actually favour is a balance. In other words, contextual, sensible, relevant use of your body and your movements and the space around you to further make your point. So instead of standing rigid, hands by sides, we've heard that myth that that's the right way to do it, to stay in the same place. Actually move about, actually use your hands, actually use the space, but use it in such a way that is relevant. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. For example, when I'm giving presentations, I will often say that something is very high, and I will make the point of raising my hand up high like this, or that it's low, and I'll go low, and I maybe even kind of crouch and cower a little bit. And I'm using the stage, using the space to make a relevant point about what I'm talking about. In the same way, I might describe a timeline where I'm talking about moving from left to right on the stage, and in the left is the past where someone was unhappy, and I move over to the middle of the stage, and I move over to the right in the future where they're more happy, but I'm using that kind of space, that space on the stage to express a timeline and what I'm actually talking about. So again, it's contextual, it's actually relevant to my presentation and the topics I'm talking about. In terms of hand movements again as well, they're another way to express yourself, another way to make your point. We see many politicians and great speakers use their hands. Sometimes they're lampooned for it or imitated for doing so, but the fact is it does help get your point across, and you're passionate about a certain point across. So in essence, in summary, we favour a nice balance, a relevant use of body language and the space around you, but not too much expression, but certainly not just standing still with your hands by your side. Nothing's going to make you look more rigid, more robotic, and basically turn off your audience. The biggest myth of all about presenting and being a great presenter is that you're just born with it. It's something you either have a natural aptitude for or you don't. And that puts off many people from ever trying to present or trying to give good presentations, because they say, well, you know what, I can't become a great presenter. That other presenter, that great speaker, they must just have a natural ability, the gift of the gab. Now, the truth is that actually presenting and being good at presenting is a skill. And that's great news, because skills can be learned, they can be taught, they can be developed, they can be refined, and ultimately you can go from being someone like me originally, who's very bad at giving presentations, very shy, to someone who's pretty good at giving presentations and very confident about giving them as well. So don't let anyone tell you that giving great presentations is something you have to be born with. It's true, maybe 10–20% of people have a natural ability that allows them to really give quite effortless presentations. But the other 80% of people are people like me, people who've worked hard at getting good at it because they know the rewards that can come from it. So basically, if you're thinking about giving presentations, if you're thinking about doing it for the first time, to borrow a famous sportswear's bit of advice, just do it and get some good training and then basically practice, because that will ultimately, as the cliche goes, make perfect.